I know that he's not very happy for not being able to take me out, but he cannot do anything. He's very very compassionate, and I mean sometimes too compassionate that he doesn't really have an authority. Sometimes I used to get very upset about him. Sometimes I even get a little bit angry. I remember getting angry also sometime to those monks and all these things. But of course I have no power. I have nothing. Anyway, I'm just a little kid. As there's a saying, your own experiences needs to be seen as an example, and that should be a knowledge, example, or the experiences that you went through, particularly if you have a sort of a hardship or maybe a sort of problematic kind of experiences or difficult experiences. You should treat people nicely because you had a difficult experiences, instead of saying, "Oh, I got a very hard treatment, and I would treat other people also very sort of difficult way." From spiritual point of view, it is not like that. Especially from the Bodhisattva and Bodhicitta point of view, it is not like that. Your experiences has to be a knowledge, and that knowledge really should make you more kind. So this is what we say and what we believe.
His Holiness often said that because of the extremely difficult times that he experienced as a child with his tutors, he decided not to put the young reincarnate Tulkus and Rinpoches, such as the second Tukse Rinpoche and Kamdro Rinpoche, through the same hardships. Instead, he takes the role of an easy master.
Even though, of course, I had a number of difficult times, but of course, these difficult times are specifically, I think, due to my own lack of diligence and all these things. And then therefore, I was sort of treated quite sort of cruelly anyway. And traditionally, if you like. It's not only me. I mean, many of the great masters and many of the living masters were treated like this by their tutors back in Tibet and anywhere else. Anyway, the traditional education is very difficult, I should say that. But I should always be very appreciative also, because the outcome of it is very good. All these educations were very, very important, and was just really helpful. But this is not really specifically the important thing that I'm referring to. I'm talking about. But some of the thing, for instance, like a general way of looking at life. For instance, these days I feel very happy for no reason, I would say. I don't really have any reason to tell you why I'm happy. And I can see some of my friends and some of my colleagues, those who had a very, very, very good time when they are young, when they are small, when they are 18. They had a very good time. But now they somehow going through a tremendous difficulties, and they really don't know what is really the difficulties that they are going through. And they feel lonely, they feel dissatisfied with any sorts of lives, any sorts of conditions, any sorts of friends, but they really don't know what it cost. So in that case, looking at myself, I feel very lucky, and I feel very, very fortunate. And then when I think of this kind of happiness and a kind of comfortable kind of feeling that I have from the depth of my heart, the appreciation goes back to those old days when I had those difficult times under my tutors and traditional treatments and all these things. So since the outcome is very positive, so I wouldn't complain anyway. Instead of complaining, I would say I had a very good time.
Many times, and on certain discouraging moments in his life, His Holiness often feels that he wishes to leave this world and never to return.
I mean, personally speaking, I would definitely prefer going to some other places and do some more sort of meaningful charities rather than hanging around over here where there's not much of work, or in other words, where there's not much of beneficial activities that I can really provide it. Here what I'm really talking about is that, those genuine teachers, masters, gurus, I sometimes feel that they do not really have that much of job left in this world, because people's interest to the teaching is very shallow. Southeast Asia and most of Tibetans and some of the Westerners also, they are quite interested not for the teachings, not for the development of their day-to-day life. And there are a handful people in the West and East, and even in India and Nepal and Himalaya region, who are really interested in enlightenment. But there are very, very few, very minority. And I would say, from the point of view of bodhicitta, of course, even if there is only one person, you have to be vowing yourself to come millions of times back into the world to save and to liberate this person. This is really great if you have that kind of motivation. But I guess sometimes I do have a shortage of motivation, or shortage of strength of the bodhicitta. But at the same time, I sometimes wondering that if I were the one who has really the power to control my birth and my sort of death, I would definitely come back in a different form. Sometime, of course, I might have said that I wouldn't like to come back at all. Or I might have said that I would sort of like to leave soon, or something like that. But of course, it's not something that you have to worry about. Overall, I would love to live. I would love to come back to meet my friends and my people, my students and my beloved ones. And I think if one is smart enough, I think you are much better off to stay here rather than leaving, because first of all, you have to go through all the intermediate state, and then you have to go through the difficulties to find your correct mother. And then after that, I don't know, 1 month and how many days of stay in womb is a very difficult thing that you went through. And then of course after that you had to go through the educations and all the difficulties that I was really talking about. And now, if you are smart enough to think about the situation, I think you definitely would love to live as long as possible rather than going.
So what does it take for a master like His Holiness to stay in this world, to guide us towards ultimate freedom?
It is the harmonious living, People should be putting a lot of effort to live harmoniously and very friendly and understandingly. It's a very important. And it's not only for the master or teacher to live long, but for themselves also. It's much more better off to live harmoniously and friendly and happily and sort of supportively, for their own sake also. Not only in the mundane level, but the spiritual level, if they do want to practice spiritual path. How can they practice without kind of a peace of mind? If the mind is full of anger, jealousy, criticism, and all these things, then where is the peace? And without peace of mind, I wouldn't think that they would be able to practice any sorts of mantra, any sorts of meditation, any sorts of things. Because mind is blown up by the ego and the manifestations of ego. And it's a very shameful also, embarrassing. I think it's longevity, so everybody needs this sort of support of living harmoniously and comfortably. For instance, if a couple or a family members, if they keep on sort of angry each other and sort of leading their life aggressively, obviously many members of that family will definitely attack with a stroke and the blood pressures and this and that, and they will tremendously suffer a lot. So it's a very logical, it's nothing special presentation or special kind of teaching or anything else, from the mundane point of view too. So especially talking about longevities of your own master, then of course it is a very big issue, because it becomes issue of samaya, and samaya leads you to either to the enlightenment or the vajra hell. So there is a kind of a two option, and you better take that, the enlightenment option. We call it upper option, not the downward. So you have to go up. You would rather go up than the down. Down refers to the vajra hell, whatever it means. So this is quite a big issue anyway.
While His Holiness remains in this world to guide and help those connected with him, there are several responsibilities that he needs to fulfill as a spiritual master in a mundane world. And he talks about his strongest wishes.
Speaking about my sort of strongest wishes spiritually, especially my own students, they should understand what is really the message of Lord Buddha. They should understand how to live not ignorantly, but with the wisdom. That actually means they should understand each other, even though they have naturally a bit of anger, a bit of desire, a bit of jealousy, etc., etc. But when they start to know each other quite well, for instance, your friend must be angry today, but you understand that he or she is a human being, and these kind of emotions, are almost a characteristic of a human being. So it's quite understandable that he or she got a little bit of irritated for some reason, and importantly that he or she is totally influenced by the ego. So there is not much of sort of choice for your friend not to get angry, not to get sort of jealousy. You would be very compassionate to him. You would be very understanding. You would be very kind to him. At least you will be sort of keeping yourself cool. That's what I meant to say by living harmoniously, living understandingly, living very happily, despite of having all these difficulties that human nature will carry it, and it will carry, and of course will represent. And this is what one of my strongest wish that I want people to fulfill for me. And then the second strongest one, my wish, even though it's something that is connected with the mundane developments, but at the same time it will eventually be very, very, very helpful for the people and for the practitioners to sort of get enlightened. That is the restoration work of Namdrupis. First of all, I'm really hoping that to turn this Namdrup into an educational center, quite an important educational center, so that not only the monk and the nuns will be educated by